Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you guys joining me on this beautiful Tuesday. Wow, it is February 10th, 2026, and we are live. The Jaybefaunt channel is also part of Revolutionary Blackout Network, so you can see me weekly for the JB show on there on Sundays. Also, if you guys have not already, please go ahead and do the business of liking the stream. That helps me out to be able to reach more people so we can educate, inspire, and activate. So thank you so very much for that there to all of you, every single one of you. All right. And then also, if you guys have not, you guys can join my Substack at jaybefaunt.substack.com. It gives you email notifications whenever I go live, write any articles, or upload any clips as you guys have seen throughout the week. Also, if you guys would like to, you guys want to get a reaction from me from a question that is on video, or if you guys would like me to react to a video that you guys find interesting, you guys can do it QBounty at qbounty.com/Jaybefaunt. So you have that there. So welcome to every single one of you. Of course, we have a big show today. This is going to be a very educational show. And just like you, I am also here to learn. We're going to take a look at the thumbnail to see what we're talking about today, and then we will get into our discussion as promptly as possible. So, and hello to everybody that's in the chat right now. So, of course, later in the show, we're going to be talking about Florida HIV disaster. This is the story that came out in Florida that I want people to be aware of. There's not a lot of people talking about it, but I think it is important that we bring this up because healthcare is on the line in Florida, and this is something that we have to pay attention to. Also, a little bit later in the show, we're going to be talking about another Gaddafi that was assassinated. So we're going to be talking about that and how Russia warned us that this was going to happen. But first, we're going to be having a discussion with Dr. CBS, talking about Trump and Epstein and what's going on geopolitically. And so I would love to introduce her. We are going to be having on Dr. Charisse Burden-Stelly. That's going to be coming on. And just to let you guys know, Dr. Charisse Burden-Stelly is joining me live today for you guys. And just to let you guys know who she is, Dr. Charisse Burden-Stelly is an associate professor of American Studies at Wayne State University. She's also the author of Black Scare, Red Scare, Theorizing Capitalist Racism in the United States. She's also a co-author with Dr. Gerald Horne of W.E.B. Du Bois, A Life in American History. And then she's a member of Black Alliance for Peace, as well as Community Movement Builders Organization. And she is now a guest on this channel. So please welcome Dr. CBS. Thank you so very much for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so very much for coming on. It is wonderful to have you. You know, of course, as you know, being a parent, it takes time away. So I'm very honored and humbled to have you here to be able to get your analysis on what's going on. So one of the things that I wanted to begin with, especially in regards to what's going on in the country today, is that there has been revelations of Donald Trump and the Epstein files. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of us have been kind of, thinking to ourselves, well, this has been a long time coming. I want to get first your reaction to all the news about Trump being on the Epstein files. What is your initial thoughts when you found out the news that it was this much?
Hey, it was frozen for a minute, but it seems to have caught up. I don't know if that was my end or your end.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was your thoughts? And
about Trump and the Epstein files.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not certain what we're supposed to think about that. I mean, like, yeah, water's wet. Like the ruling class does all sorts of nefarious things. So a lot of the conversation is about pedophilia, because obviously that is like one of the most severe crimes. If we understand colonialism and imperialism, we understand the ways that women and children are enslaved, trafficked, brutalized sexually and otherwise by the ruling class. And so I think so it's not surprising. Always the details are horrifying, but I wouldn't say that they're necessarily surprising. Over and over again, these people have shown us that they are above the law, that they are in a state of exception insofar as they are not subjected to the same types of penalty, scrutiny, and punishment that normal, regular people are. And so, I mean, I think that it is significant. There's some strange discourse that is coming out, you know. So on the one hand, people are saying invasions of Cuba and Venezuela are sort of distractions from the Epstein files, and I think it's wrong-headed to make that analysis. They're two sides of the same coin. The contravention of sovereignty and self-determination is part and parcel of this broader sexual deviancy that has real life catastrophic consequences on oppressed and marginalized people. I think on the other hand, it is, you know, on the other hand, people are saying, you know, the Epstein files are a distraction from us paying attention to Gaza and Venezuela and Cuba and other things. And I want us to have a more dialectical analysis that all of these atrocities are connected. And this idea that the government is being strategic about this or that, maybe yes, maybe no. But I think that we need to take a sort of broader and more connected viewpoint whereby what are we going to do about it? Because the other thing, too, is that all of these atrocities are coming out about some people who have passed away. Many of these people are still alive and well. I don't see any arrest warrants for these people. And so part of what they're conveying is like they're embarrassed, sort of, but it's also like, but what are you going to do about it ultimately? Part of this is conveying that it doesn't matter what we do. And a disorganized, distracted, mollified population is not going to do anything about it anyway. So those are some of just my initial thoughts about it.
Yeah, actually, that was I appreciate that the point that you made, especially about how this is all connected. We as Black people, we are canaries in the coal mine when it comes to a lot of these things. And so my thought was, well, how many people balked at the knowledge of Thomas Jefferson essentially raping Sally Hemings? You know, this is as tale as old as time within this country. And so why are we surprised? Is it because, you know, it's happening with people who are way at the top? But that's not unusual. It's happened since this country's inception. So is it the fact that it's so barbaric? Because the barbarism has been a part of this country too.
I mean, I think the scale and scope might be shocking. And then the other things that are coming out on the Epstein files, such as Epstein's profound ability to sort of direct and impact foreign policy, which again has very direct consequences on colonized and racialized people. The extent to which, you know, university professors, I'm an academic, and so that is, you know, another thing. These university professors who are supposed to be in these, you know, vaunted ivory towers are also part and parcel of this. Very big name scholars. And one can only imagine what they're doing to their students, right? How they're also treating their colleagues. And so I think that, I mean, the other thing that I'm always thinking about is like, it is very easy to be outraged and disgusted when these things are happening, when celebrities are committing these crimes. But the fact of the matter is, these things are happening in our communities every day, right? There's these forms of sexual violence and deviancy. And so even if we can't necessarily do anything to hold these rich people accountable, we can hold the people in our communities accountable. And so if it is that if we really are outraged at sexual violence and its connection to abuses of power, there are everyday things that we can do. And so, you know, I hope that it incites us to action in that way, even as we also are trying to kind of get these people out of power and make sure that they can't continue to get away with these type of actions.
Yeah, I love how you said that it was all connected, even when it comes to foreign policy. I just want to share this as well. This is actually out of the cradle. It says emails from July 2011 reveal that Jeffrey Epstein and his associate Greg Brown plotted to pressure Libyan officials and seize state assets under the pretext of post-war reconstruction, with the involvement of former MI6 and Mossad operatives. The exchanges took place during Libya's 2011 war, just weeks before Muammar Gaddafi was killed. And so this really just goes into what you were explaining about this. This isn't just your rank pedophile ring. This is more of just, this is connected to really, I hate to sound almost like this is a mustache twirling villain, but this is really world domination while doing depraved acts, and also using said depraved acts to blackmail other people who are in the upper echelons of power.
I mean, on a different register, it reminds me of the ways that like Trump is getting back at his enemies in the Democratic Party through things like housing fraud and etc. And he's able to do it because these people probably are committing these crimes. Some of it might be trumped up, but it's like this is why we talk about one party, two states, because they're all doing all sorts of things. And the reason why he's able to like get some of his enemies on things like mortgage fraud is because they're all doing it. And so likewise, I think that Epstein is able to kind of to bring in all of these different factions into this perversion and then use it against them because they're all doing it. So it's not necessarily about what party one belongs to, but the fact that when you get to a certain level of power and influence and wealth, you're engaging in all sorts of things because you never think you're going to get caught. And until there is some sort of organized and protracted resistance, why wouldn't you continue to do it? And I think that sometimes we get distracted because, you know, there's certain charities, for example, or certain good things that people donate to. But we can't, but that pales in comparison to the devastation and the violence that these people engage in across political parties.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and as far as mass organization and mobilization, because I think, you know, you stated this earlier, that these people, they pretty much will never see the inside of a jail cell. But is there a way that we can make sure that we as a people get to a point of holding them accountable, or are we too far gone from this gaggle of depraved individuals in order to do that?
You know, I'll be honest, I don't even know if accountability is even the right framework, because they have proven they are not accountable to us. Even if they are elected, they are not. They have proven time and again they are not accountable to us. And so I don't even, you know, I won't say more on Al Gore's internet, but I don't know if accountability is the right framework. But I absolutely do think we have the power to do something. And what that something is are things that hopefully we're having conversations about in our various groups and cohorts. So, yeah.
Well, hopefully something will happen. Some type. The arc of the universe is long and it bends towards justice, but we have to be the ones that do the bending. So I'm hoping that it bends a little bit more this time around. But
I do think they should absolutely be pariahs. They should be pariahs. Even, you know, I think ultimately expropriation is one of the key goals, but they should be pariahs. They should experience and know no peace wherever it is that they go. Even if it amounts to just a minor annoyance for them, like these people absolutely should not be seen as part of any civilization. They are beyond savages. So
yeah, I definitely agree. That should be at least the floor of what we should do. Yeah, agreed. I want to move on to this next one that I wanted to talk about. So, with ICE raids happening across the country, more people are focused on Trump than ever before. But when we look at the numbers and the raw data, President Obama deported more immigrants in his 8 years by this point than Trump has, in technically now we're in his fifth year of presidency. But my question is, what type of socio-political climate do you see the nation being in by the point when Donald Trump has the full 8 years? Because of all the issues that we've been seeing, the murder of Keith Porter Jr., the murder of Renee Good, the murder of Alex Preddy, the detaining of people who their only crime was coming across the border undocumented, but then just being peaceful and working and having families. There was just a little girl that had breathing issues and problems, medical emergency. She was in a hospital. She had an infection, and she had to be brought. And then she was brought back to the same facility, and they were denying her medication. I think she was like 4 or 5 year old little girl. And so, where do you think that we will be by the time we hit late 2028 with this presidency? Do you think that are we going to get to a point where we're fed up, or is that more of just a point where we're just apathetic and we just throw our hands up and just say, if it happens, it happens?
I don't know. I don't know. It really depends. And I think it depends a lot on what we do with Los Angeles and Chicago and Minneapolis, these places that have had sort of soft sieges laid upon them. And if those mobilizations and kind of short-term strikes turn into preemptive and offensive forms of organizing elsewhere, because it's one thing and it's very important to be able to mobilize a defense and mobilize mutual aid networks to protect communities once the invasion has happened. It's quite another to be prepared and preclude that invasion from happening from the outset, as deterrent. So these people know, it's like, you cannot come in and murder 2 or 3 people and then that galvanize. I think that that's just a different framework. And to me, I hope that's what's happening now. And I hope that we don't know about it because we shouldn't know about it. Hopefully we've come past the point where we're dry snitching all the time on the internet and we are just doing this work. And so if it is that we have both defensive and offensive approaches, if we're able to flip a segment of the military, the policing apparatus of the sort of the MAGA base, if we're able to organize our racialized and colonized communities and care for one another as these services are taken out of our communities, that will give us a better sense of where we're going to go. I'm not sure, but I also think, this is a weird metaphor. So I think that we've lost this battle. And I don't say that pessimistically. I don't know. There's certain teams that they have a losing season, right? Because they know they have a losing season. There's so much that they can do. They can practice trick plays. They can do all sorts of things because they don't have the pressure of winning or continuing a legacy or something. And so this might just be a time of like experimentation and really building up a mass base in this moment. But I personally think that it's going to be a real struggle and slog because we didn't believe our own analysis when things weren't quite so bad. And I think that we're paying for that lack of preparedness now. So that is a very long-winded way of saying I'm not sure. I do not know. I don't know where we're going. I don't know what's going to happen, but As they say, it's like pessimism of the intellect, optimism of the will.
Hmm. Do you think that lack of preparation among the masses partially is due to some groups not paying attention to some of the most marginalized within our country?
I don't think we believed our own analysis. Or I think that over and again, the U.S. mythology is very strong.
Mm,
We believe that the U.S. is democratic, or it could be so. We believe
yeah,
that
yeah, that's
you
true. Yeah.
that you know that there are bad actors, but in a general sense, like the American project is a good one. And I think that even people who know that that's not the case have still behaved as such in times when we're not under such duress.
Mm,
And I think that that's across the spectrum. I don't think it's just or even primarily the masses. I think that we have one of the most reactionary petty bourgeois classes,
mm,
and as we know, that's the class that is most amenable to fascism, by the way. And so you know, and we just have historically, not compared to the rest of the world, not had a very strong left, because Americanism has stood in for like Marxism and class analysis historically because of the deep anti-radicalism of this settler colonial slaveocracy, right? So,
mhm.
so I think there's a number, there's a number of reasons why we are where we are. And I think that the power of co-optation of the ruling class has been as strong, if not stronger, than the power of coercion and repression. The co-optation game is impeccable, up to and including they're using our shit against us right now. Like the Civil Rights Act is being used against DEI. Imagine how powerful that co-optation is.
Yeah,
And so that apparatus is just very strong. So, but these things are not, they're not ontological, they're not transhistorical. So they have their historical process, which means that they can also be undone
yeah,
through a different set of forces.
yeah. I'm thinking because the reason why I asked that question is I'm thinking about the Black community
Mm-hmm.
and what we have been through historically within this country, particularly the Black American community. And I see elements of the ruling class co-opting our language, our culture, and separating us even further from the Black radical tradition to almost make it seem like, well, these guys that were Black radicals, well, they just didn't get it, right? Like the Robert F. Smiths and the Huey P. Newtons and the Malcolm X's, they didn't grasp the American dream, but you can. And so then they have a lot of us Black people kind of embracing this country and saying, well, your ancestors, their blood is in this soil, but then it's like, but why is our blood in this soil in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
And we're constantly being told, well, you are American, and the fact that you are means that anybody who comes from the outside whatsoever, to coin the phrase from Kendrick Lamar, is they not like us. And it's
Mm-hmm.
almost this otherizing of other different groups who are also struggling. Now, I do understand that they will use anti-Blackness and catering to white supremacy as a means for self-preservation, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, aren't we somewhat doing the same thing and allowing ourselves to be co-opted for the same means of self-preservation?
I would think so. And, understanding is not excusing, but
Mhm.
for people who have been historically beleaguered, attacked at every turn,
Yeah.
at all levels of class, and having, it's inevitable that we would internalize some of that. And it's inevitable that, you know, um, people would want to believe this like but for logic, as it's called, right? I've talked about this elsewhere, but that the United States actually is a great country, but for racism, right? But for these kind of malformations of what the ideal is. And so um this is why I think that political education is important. And, you know, people condemn, people hate to see a fucking book recommendation coming. Okay. But this is why I think that we say we study, because not because it's the only thing that we do, or because it's better than organizing and being in the streets. All of these things matter, but I think that it is very, very important to be clear, to have clarity about what actually is. That being said, there has always been a faction of Black people, even enslaved Africans, who were American in the sense that they believed in this country. So today, so I teach Black social and political thought. And today I was teaching about Jupiter Hammond, who was an enslaved African, who was like one of the first, they say that he's like the first Black conservative. He did not think that Black people should rebel because rebelliousness was an assertion of individuality over the will of God. All of that to say, there has always been a faction of people who deeply believe in the American project. But likewise, there has always been factions of people who knew that this was bullshit, whether it's because they repatriated to Haiti, went to, you know, Liberia, or, you know, engaged in other forms of, you know, they tried to overthrow the slave system. So there's always been a multitude of Black people. And I think that we see this today, but a sort of lack of organization and of a strong, viable left to codify that rebelliousness is it's chaos. It's there, but it's just not organized. So it reminds me of like Kwame Ture. He has this video where he talks about the uprising that happened in LA in response to Rodney King, and it was spontaneous. It wasn't, but it was that collective mass action that has been indicative of our existence as Black people. But I do think that co-optation has been very effective. I do think that naked violence and repression has been effective, but so has resistance, right? As CLR James says, the only place that Black people have not resisted is in the pages of white people's history books. So that's something.
I need to take your class. So thank you very much for that. I want to move on to this particular question. And there has actually been some news as of late, what's been going on. And I just want to move to this foreign policy. When Donald Trump had the democratically elected president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife, Celia Flores, kidnapped, and then they were sent to New York, he set his sights on Cuba. Now, with the crippling sanctions, Trump had added an extreme blockade. This blockade is basically over a blockade of oil coming into the country. What will this mean for the Cuban people, their revolution, and the impact or blowback on us in the country?
I think it's absolutely devastating. It is absolutely devastating. It is incumbent on anti-imperialist countries, or even just people who, nations who are against the hegemony of the United States, to act. Like Mexico, it's like, send the oil. Russia, China, send the oil, because the Cuban Revolution, irrespective of the significant issues that it's faced, as because of initially the embargo, and then being added to the sponsors of state terrorism under Biden, right? Or under Trump 1, continued under Biden, and now this extreme blockade. Irrespective of all of the issues that have happened as a result of these attacks, the Cuban Revolution has been steadfast. The literacy that has spread throughout the island, the doctors that are sent to the global South, the support historically that Cuba has offered for revolutionary struggles, it would be devastating for the revolution, for the Cuban Revolution to fall. It would be absolutely devastating. And already, I thought I saw, or I was having a conversation where somebody said like 2 million people have left an island of 10 million people already. And if we think about this in terms of that is extraordinary brain drain. That is an extraordinary depletion of the most productive population. And I was thinking about it in terms of like the slave trade and the impact of the most able-bodied, productive, and creative segment of African nations being exported at a crucial time of development. And likewise, I think that, we can think about it in kind of parallel terms. And so it will be absolutely devastating and a fundamental failure of any pivot toward multipolarity, towards the consolidation of the anti-imperialist or South-South blocks, if something is not done quickly.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I want to share this article that came out. Of course, we got to be careful with Al Jazeera from time to time because they are out of Qatar. But this article actually says Cuba to introduce plans to address fuel shortage amid U.S. blockade. And so they are experiencing blackouts in Cuba because they get their energy, electricity is powered by oil. And so it says Cuba is set to roll out a plan to deal with fuel shortages as the United States blocks supplies to the country. Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel announced his intentions on Thursday to roll out a plan as early as next week. He said the island nation will ramp up solar generation and use renewable resources to ensure electricity for vital services, including hospitals, the elderly care centers, and isolated regions. Cuba produces about 100,000 megawatts, or 38% of its daytime generation, from solar panels. Diaz-Canel said that the news conference they had installed with support from China over the past 2 years. But I want to point to this part. It talks about vital services, including hospitals, elderly care, and isolated regions. As somebody that was on kidney dialysis for almost 18 years, you need electricity in order to be able to operate those dialysis machines. Mm-hmm. And you need electricity in order to be able to operate in hospitals and for life-saving mm-hmm. measures. And so what the Trump administration, the Trump regime is really doing is really trying to cause or trying to be a catalyst for death within the country, to basically bring the nation to its knees, to throw away the revolution that was won over 60 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Well, because something else that I think to think through is probably the project of expansion of solar power would be more advanced without sanctions, because there are vital parts that Cuba may not have access to because of other sanctions and because of the embargo. Because it reminds me of during COVID-19, Cuba had developed various vaccines but didn't have syringes, right? Because of these various, right? And so that's something else that we have to think about, that even this project of increasing solar power on the island, which is so incredibly important, is also stymied by these very same processes. And perhaps this oil embargo wouldn't be so acute if it weren't for the previous sanctions that held up this project of alternative energy. So it's all connected. And at the end of the day, right, part of it is the world has failed Gaza. And what so many people were saying is that when they're saying that this is the laboratory, this is the litmus test, that this is a test case for what's going to happen elsewhere, it's similar with Cuba, right? That you break Venezuela, you break Cuba, and you continue to use this warfare, these forms of irregular and direct warfare, to crush every single country and to steal their resources. And so I think that Cuba is important for the sake of the Cuban Revolution, but it is also important because as we continue to let nation after nation be subjected to these brutal regimes, the more normalized it becomes, and then there's nobody left to defend anything.
Absolutely. In fact, let's hear straight from the people. So this is an article that says Eastern Cuba residents point to the impact of the Trump administration's anti-Cuban measures. So make sure this is big enough so that everybody can read along with me. But It says with the current Washington administration uses accusations, it has been unable to substantiate and declare the Caribbean nation as an unusual and extraordinary threat to the most powerful country on the planet. The presidents of Santiago de Cuba experienced the effects of this economic strangulation policy. So it says Juliet, I don't want to mess up her name, Julianella, a mother of two children, one of whom has a disability, stated that the limitations to get medicines, toiletries, and basic food items affect her family's well-being, not only materially, but also psychologically. It should stop because it harms all Cuban families. So I just want to highlight this because a lot of times when we talk about sanctions, everybody thinks it's against the ruling class or the people who are part of the governing body, but it's very minimal in comparison to the working class, the proletariat, and the people who are at the lowest level of a ladder within the country.
Yeah, and in fact, the people who have more resources are able to withstand it better because they can go around, like they might have family in the diaspora. They might be getting various aspects of remittances. They might, they can go through other channels and other means to get things that they need. Whereas families that don't have those same connections, i.e. working class and poor people who don't have those connections are definitely bearing the brunt. And mind you, many of the different Venceremos brigades that have been going to Cuba for years, every time they go, they're bringing like vital supplies because this is just an intensification. But this terrorism, this financial terrorism of Cuba has been happening for decades, right? And it hasn't, I was just reading something, I think that it said that Cuba, within 24 hours, Cuba wouldn't even have enough fuel for planes because they are diverting what fuel they have for these in this vital sector. And so again, that has implications for if people are able to even bring things in, the tourism sector, which is also a very huge part of Cuba's ability to sustain itself. And so it's just, there are widespread effects of this intensification of the attack on Cuba. And it's something that I don't think we can, it's really important to act now, to do what we can now.
Yeah. In fact, I want to share some slightly positive news that is coming out. And I hope that this trend continues because I know that there's a lot going on in regards to what's happening in Cuba. And I feel like we're going to feel extreme blowback within, I say, the next 8 to 10 weeks. But let me share this with you as well. This just recently came out. It says Russia will continue to supply oil to Cuba. Let me put that down. Russia will continue to supply oil to Cuba. And so this was last week. And so they said that they will continue to do so. That was from Ambassador to Cuba, Victor Coronelli. He said, we will assume this practice will continue. Now, it says that Donald Trump has began talks with the highest people in Cuba, but he called Cuba an unusual and extraordinary threat. My question, though, is, Dr. Burden-Stelly, one of the things I question is, how is Cuba, with its small amount of people, how is Cuba a unusual and extraordinary threat? Like, what would make it that in the eyes of the most powerful nation in the world, as well as the biggest nuclear superpower?
Because Cuba conveys that despite decades-long barbarism, you can wage a revolution and you can win. It's the same as Haiti. Haiti is still paying the price for being the first successful African revolution, the first slave society to free itself. And it's still paying the price for this. So was paying reparations to France for a very long time and continues to bear the brunt of Western aggression and continues, to paraphrase Jemima Pierre, to be the place that represents the limits of leftism. Left except for Haiti, right? Leftism stops at the shores of Haiti, whereby even people like Lula will support and spearhead an ongoing occupation of Haiti. And so I think that likewise with Cuba, what it represents, it's an ideological threat, but it is also it is a actually existing alternative to US barbarism. It conveys that you can wage a revolution, you can win, you can sustain it, you can nationalize resources, you can withstand color revolution after, or sort of attempt astroturfed pseudo rebellion after pseudo rebellion, and you can still provide for people, but it will cost something. And so I think that is the existential threat that Cuba represents to the United States, because it's certainly not, there's no threat of invasion, there's no threat of nuclear war, right? Though all of those threats come from this country. And so it is only a threat because it represents that another world is possible. And there's many critiques that one can have of Cuba, but what Cuba does have is a higher literacy rate than this place. What Cuba does have is a higher rate of healthcare than this place, right? It has many things. That it has a sort of international doctors program, an international education program. It has free education, all things that if we truly organized and struggled for those things here, this would not, the ruling class would not withstand it. So I think that is what the threat that Cuba represents.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is basically, in a nutshell, their existence is resistance.
Yeah. I mean, if we want to boil it down to like, yeah. I would say so. I think that their existence is not only resistance, but possibility.
I see. Very, very nice. Yes. One more thing that I just wanted to ask before I let you go, because I planned on just doing 3 questions, but this is a 2-parter. My question is in regards to what we can do here. Many are turning their sights to the midterm elections that are going to be happening in November. There are some people who are running outside of duopoly that have solid platforms. You have Anthony Aguilar and Brian McGinnis running for House and Senate in North Carolina. You have Greg Stoker running for the House and the U.S. House in Texas. And then you have Butch Ware and Ramsey Robinson that are running for governor of California, both in different outside parties. But as far as the state of the left goes, what strategies are the strongest push that we should be doing to fight for an actual future?
I don't really have any comment on electoralism. What I will say, I mean, I do think that there are certain people who get into office who can terrorize the people less. And I think that is the best that we can kind of hope for from electoral politics. What should we be doing? Again, I think that we should be offensively organizing our communities, like meeting our neighbors, pooling our resources, establishing alternative ways of survival. I think that we should be doing as much in person safely, that we can do safely. I will always think that we should be studying. People will say, you can't read forever. Well, it might take us forever to read because half of the country is illiterate. So people might literally need forever to read if we don't read. We have to read. I think that we can slowly work to get our attention span back, our capacity to to engage in something for a sustained period of time. That's important. All of this distraction, all of these dopamine hits that we're now acculturated to, it is very intentional.
Yeah.
I think that we can re-engage in humanness, and also, our non-human relatives, as AI is being pushed on us. Like, for those who watched the Super Bowl, the inundation of AI commercials, like, we can get back to like human connection. I know that this might sound woo woo or whatever, but it's like, I really think that the everyday like human connections and those very small steps, those very small forms of preparation for attack are something that we can do now in so many ways. And I think, that's as important as like the one big thing, that we want to happen. So all hands on deck. But if you believe that we need to rock the vote, organize as many people as you can to vote. Work very hard to stop voter suppression. If you believe that we need food co-ops and growing food and having alternative sources of food is a thing, grow food, teach people to grow things. If you think, fighting the police is the way to do it, beat their ass and train and all of the martial arts, learn, do weapons training. So it's like, there's something for everybody to do. We need all hands on deck. And so, like, far be it from me to poo-poo any tool in our toolkit. Just do something and do it collectively and in a way that, and with an eye toward like people.
Okay. Wow. Thank you. You basically said what I said, but you just said it with a lot more eloquence than I ever could. So thank you so very much for that. And I think that that's one of the things that we have to continue to keep fighting for. This is why I do mutual aid, as often as I possibly can. My comrade Saif, she actually did a mutual aid workshop last month, which actually helps the people to be able to start, at least if you can start something, you and just one other friend, and then grow from there. And so I think that's really the path forward. And while I have you here, I just want to share this one more thing so that people know about this. So here is your book, Black Scare, Red Scare, Theorizing Capitalist Racism in the United States. That is already linked in the description down below for everybody to go to.
Yeah, let me just pub this book. So this is Negro Liberation by Harry Haywood. We just reprinted it. I wrote the introduction to this reprint. His daughter, Rebecca Hall, wrote the foreword, but this just came out with Haymarket. I love Harry Haywood. He is so important to me right now. Of course, Walter Rodney always. This is Harry Haywood right here. This is Queen Mother Moore. I forgot who this is. But please, get this book. You don't even listen. If you can find even the 1948 text, there's PDFs everywhere. You don't even have to buy it. But like, read Harry Haywood. Even if you hate tankies, read Harry Haywood. He's amazing. So I just want to mention that book as well.
Yeah. I mean, you can never make me hate tankies, but thank you very much for that book recommendation, because I read books on my channel and I'm trying to, get through more. I'm actually reading Margaret Kimberly's book, Prejudicial Black America and the Presidents.
I'm reading that.
Yeah, that book. It's enlightening. I love having Margaret Kimberly on whenever I can, because she's a national treasure. So
super brilliant. I also recommend another shameless plug. So I'm part of the Anti-Imperialist Scholars Collective. We have a blog called My Pen is My Machete. We just dropped our volume. I co-edited this volume on the Tricontinental Conference of 1966. But please read that blog. There is so much amazing analysis from anti-imperialist scholars. And you may not agree with everything, but if you don't like books, read a blog, read an article, anything. Read the captions on a video. Read something.
Absolutely. Look, Dr. Charisse Burden-Stelly, thank you so very much for coming on. It was definitely a privilege to have you. You have elevated the conversation and helped me feel a little bit more enlightened. And I'm sure you did the same thing for my audience. And so thank you for so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for this platform. And thank you for everybody who pulled up. So see y'all later.
Take care.
All right,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.
All right, guys, that was Dr. Burden-Stelly coming on to drop some knowledge, analysis, and wisdom for us on this particular show. Thank you so very much to her. Whew, I learned a lot. I hope you did too. Go ahead and give a like to the stream. Thank you so very much to everybody for tuning in for this. And we shall get to the comments in the chats. And let's get into this here. So we're going to go into the Rumble chat just to see if we have any Rumble rants. Looks like we're good on the Rumble side. So we are golden there. Like Jill Scott said, living my life like it's golden. All right. So let me check to see on the Kick side to see if we have any gifted subs, anything like that. Looks like we're pretty good so far on the Kick side. We are happy over here. I am glad. All righty. So, and now let's get to the rest of the chat and we shall move on. All right. So, we have, let me see. OBE Direct says, looking forward to the show. I was looking forward to it too. I was excited. Kime says, skipping my lunch workout just so I can catch this love. Oh, that is so nice of you. You probably could have been like on the treadmill while listening. That's cool. Sometimes I will listen to different people while I'm either on my walk or if I'm at the gym and I'm like on the treadmill. There are certain people who I listen to and I'm feeding my brain while working my legs, you know. By the way, tomorrow's upper body day. I am not looking forward to those push-ups, but hey, it is what it is. But yeah, so thank you very much for being there. Kime. All right, we have Edward saying, hey, JB, I am so sick of Trump and the whole political system. This is why we got to get out there and meet our neighbors because we got to fight and create something brand spanking new. Also, let me see. Oh, I will save that comment for the next segment. So we'll get into that in a little bit. Zoya coming in the chat. Good to see you, Zoya. It says build community infrastructure. Absolutely. I mean, look what the Black Panthers did. They built community infrastructure in order to be able to uplift the community so that we can bypass the power of these corporate parasites, right? So this is one of the things that we can do. Teresa says build parallel institutions. Yes, that's just another way of saying building dual power, building parallel institutions, same thing. It's just a matter of semantics, but absolutely, because the thing is like, I put it this way. You cannot burn a house down if you don't have a shelter already built to replace it. Because if you don't, you'll just be left out in the cold. So build your shelter. And then let the house fall. But you got to build shelter first. At least build something sustainable for you. That's basically it. Let's continue on here. Kime says, I am really over the fetishization of veterans who somehow see the light of the same imperialist system they fought for being celebrated for seeing the light and running for office. I get it. I think there is something to be said that they kind of are on the ground. Like, okay, it's one thing to be behind the glass and watching somebody in the factory make the sausage. So you see how the sausage is made, but you're watching from afar. It's another thing to be somebody who's on the factory floor and you're actually the one making the sausage on the factory floor. You know what I mean? So in that way, I think there is some benefit because they can also offer some insights into how things work in that way. But as far as the fetishization of them, no. They are what's the best way I can put this? They are what I would consider to be anti-imperialist intelligence. Does that make any sense? Kind of like that. And it's like, okay, so we kind of know this, but what's the process exactly? Like, for instance, you ask a driver, what does a transmission do? They can tell you the basics of what a transmission does, but a mechanic can tell you all the pieces, all the intricacies of how the transmission works, what happens when different variables are introduced to the transmission, things like that. So it's kind of like that. And so they have that there. I don't know. Does that make sense? Sometimes I'm not that great at explaining things. I'm not like a Margaret Kimberly or Dr. Burden-Stelly. I'm not as good at explaining things as they are. But yeah, thank you very much for that. Black Unit Griffin coming in, waving the pink hands. All right. Kind of like the Pink Panther. Da-da, 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 da-da. All right, now I'm going to have that song stuck in my head all day. All right, let's see who else we have. We have Spruce Wayne coming in saying, first JB show I've actually seen pop up a lot. Wow. Nice. Well, I'm glad. Thank you so very much for tuning in. All right. Let me see. Terry coming in saying, greetings, comrades. Good to see you. Terry is in the chat. Sila says, yes, start with the 15 minutes of reading for 1 week, then add another 15 minutes each week. Get reading chat. Yep. Or you guys, I literally have playlists of me reading books. If you guys, what the funnest part to do is? If you get the same book that I'm reading and you read along with me. Right? It's awesome. It's awesome. It's so cool. So you guys get to see the words and then hear my annoying voice while you're reading it. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Let me see. Roger says, intricate, detailed web of solutions, dismantling the systems piece by piece, not destroy. Thank you very much for that. Let me see. Spruce says, I can't send super chats. I don't think I have anything turned off on my channel. At least not that I know of. Let's see. Unless whatchamacallit is messing up right now. I don't think YouTube might be glitching. I don't know. These things happen. Everything looks fine. Let me see. Yeah, everything's on. I don't know. Interesting. Everything's on though. Maybe refresh? I don't know. But it is what it is. Thank you very much for that notice. And then so it says, let's make you an intro. Yeah, I got a lot I need to do, but yeah. And yeah, thank you, Spruce Wayne. Yes, I do have a Patreon, and I'm moving away because of what happened with Gray Zone. I'm moving away from PayPal. I'm going to start posting my Venmo on there instead because PayPal has treated the Gray Zone like trash. So I'm going to try to move away from that. Yes. And then Black Unit Griffin says, how was Sabi's mutual aid shindig? It was wonderful. In fact, I was there. And I recommend anybody and everybody, like, even if you already do mutual aid, there may be something that you may learn that's new. And it's always great to have reminders and refreshers. So, Roger, thank you very much for this super chat. Well, they are working. It says you read part 2, but not what was sent above. Oh, wait, hang on. I don't think I saw it. I think I stopped. I think I started like way late. Hang on. I don't know what's going on. It's not allowing me to scroll up. Hang on. Let me see. I'm trying to find. I'm literally going up, Roger. I'm sorry. I didn't see it. Wait, I went all the way to the top. Okay. Did it come through, Roger? I didn't see it. Just trying to make sure. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just trying to make sure I find this because I don't want to miss this. What in the world? Let me see. Yeah, this is literally the first comment that I see, Roger, from you. It says intricate detail, web of solutions, dismantling the system piece by piece, not destroy. Was that part 1? Because that's the first comment from you that I see the entire stream. I'm way at the top. And the first person who commented was at 12:10 p.m. I'm way at the top. So I'm not sure exactly what happened. And I would hate for you to have to resend it because I know you probably don't have it like typed. So I'm sorry, but I'm literally looking through right now and I don't see it. Yeah, this is literally the first comment that I have. I'm sorry, Roger. So yeah, my apologies. He said it's right above where you just said. No, it's not showing. This right above this is what I have here. Gracias, Dr. CBS. That's the first thing I have. That is literally the first thing I have right above you. I don't have anything else. I literally scrolled all the way down. That you're the first one. I'm sorry. He said, I hope you had a chance to look at my plan to protect the CBI process. The left thinks they're Tyson, that they can knock out the enemy with just one blow in the first round, when instead it's going to take let me see. Okay, I guess that was it. I guess that's what you sent first. Okay. But I do have to move on. Let me get to this one also before I head out to the next subject. It says other countries might be willing to entertain these suggestions if we are doing everything in our power to prevent those countries from being bombed. All right. Thank you very much for that. Oh, that was part 1. Okay. Thank you very much for that, Roger. All right. Black Unit Griffin says, it looks like some comments are not going through. I checked. That might be what it is then. It might be a glitch on YouTube then. My apologies, man. All right. So before we head out, I head out. What am I talking about? We ain't done yet. But let's get into, let me thank the patrons on Patreon, because we need to make sure that they are appreciated. Because without them, I wouldn't be able to keep the lights on. So thank you very much to everybody. Here are the tiers. We have Mega Jaybefaunters, Super Duper Jaybefaunters, Super Jaybefaunters, Jaybefaunters. Then we have Comrade, Solidarity, and JB members. And to all brand new members, thank you so very much for being a patron on Patreon. I would not be able to do this without y'all or anybody that sends me chats, super chats, memberships, all that stuff. Thank you so very much for helping me keep the lights on and making sure that I got some food in the fridge. Let's be real. And also, if you guys would like to help me, I will be linking the Venmo in the chat if you guys want to donate that way as well. All right, guys, let's get into the next one we're going to be talking about today. So, of course, we already talked and had a conversation with Dr. CBS. We're going to be getting into this next one about another Gaddafi murdered. So we're going to be talking about that. This is a story that actually came out late last week, and I was going to do a clip about this, but I just wanted to let it marinate for a few days just to see if there's any new news that came out. And so now we are going to talk about this right now. So, keeping Libya down. We are going to be getting into this right now. So as far as we know, Muammar Gaddafi was murdered really by people who were backed by the West in order to take him down, because he proves to be a massive threat to the West, the Western powers. Libya was by far one of the richest, if not the richest country in the entire continent of Africa. And Gaddafi was doing so many positive things economically for the people of Libya that he was deemed a threat. But of course, one person that still stood in the way, or at least seemingly stood in the way of Libya continuing to be a vassal really for the West, was his son, Saif Gaddafi. And Saif Gaddafi, who is the son of Muammar Gaddafi, was recently murdered, assassinated. So let's get into the story, because it is absolutely horrific what happened, especially if he was trying to carry on the legacy of his father. I think this is something that we should pay a lot of attention to. So let's get into this as well. So I want to share this article because Russia essentially warned Libya of what was about to happen. So let's get into this. It says Russian intelligence accuses Macron of authorizing operations aimed at eliminating undesirable leaders in Africa. So it says Foreign Intelligence Service claims French administration seeking political comeback on African continent after losses. And what are these, before we get into this article, what are these quote unquote losses that France wants to essentially get back? So I want you guys to know this phrase, France Afrique. And this is basically the French dominated African countries that were really supplying not just gold, but also resources to the French government, to France. You had countries like Mali, you have Burkina Faso, you had Niger, and there's many other countries within the Sahel region. and in Africa that are also dominated by the French as well. But the three, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, kicked the French out. And now, like for instance, Mali had they had gold mines but no gold reserves, whereas France had gold reserves but no gold mines. And you can't have reserves without mines. And so therefore they were literally stealing the gold from places like Mali. Niger has uranium. The uranium is used for France's nuclear power plants that supply them with electricity. And so a majority of the uranium was taken out of Niger and supplied into France so that French people can have power. But most of the people in Niger didn't have electricity. And now you have Burkina Faso as well in this, as well as France tries to extract as much out of Burkina Faso as well. Well, Burkina Faso basically said, yeah, no, you're not doing that anymore. There was a coup that happened a few years back where the leader of the coup, Captain Ibrahim Traore, had basically usurped the government out of a French or Western puppet's hand and actually started ruling on behalf of the people in Burkina Faso. So now France is pissed. They're angry. They're mad. They're perturbed. They are pressed because these countries dare to be free. And so now, because of the bountiful resources that a country like Libya has, and also these countries were inspired by Gaddafi and Libya, well, the junior of the Gaddafis also got murdered because he might have been instrumental in trying to bring Libya back from the brink as to where the West put it at. So let's get into this article here and let's begin. So it says Russia's Foreign Intelligence Services, the SVR, on Monday accused French President Emmanuel Macron of authorizing intelligence operations aimed at eliminating what it described as quote-unquote undesirable leaders in Africa. In a statement, SVR said the Macron administration is frantically seeking a political comeback on the African continent, where France has experienced what the agency characterized as significant losses in recent years. These setbacks, according to the statement, are linked to the rise in power in several former French colonies, Africa, of patriotic forces that prioritize the interests of the people and refuse to serve as puppets for the financial and political oligarchy of French globalists. He says, what inspired by the American operation to capture Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, or imagining himself as the arbiter of the fate of African nations, Macron authorized his intelligence services to launch a plan to eliminate undesirable leaders in Africa. So what does this mean? What does he mean by undesirable leaders? Well, he basically means leaders that aren't going to do the bidding of the French government. Basically, I'll put it, and I've used this example before, but this is like you have you and a friend decide that there's this store that you guys would like to rob. And so you case the joint, right? And instead of just busting in there with your, firearms pointed at the people, instead you make it so that that person that you're with, they get hired to be in the company, and then they get to be the general manager of the entire store. And so when they're the general manager of the entire store, instead of actually robbing it in a traditional sense, you rob it more in a intricate way, where you walk in through the front door and then you ask the manager for goods for very cheap or nearly free. And so that manager, who's your man on the inside, decides to give you all the resources you want for cheap or nearly free. And then you get to walk out there without ever having to say or ever having to be blamed for robbing the place, because you have plausible deniability. And so this is exactly how France is doing France is doing a lot of these African countries. The United States does it too. A lot of these European and Western nations, they do this. And so then when people go, oh, you're stealing their resources, they go, we didn't steal their resources. They were democratically elected. Meanwhile, they actually finagle things in order to be able to put that particular person in power, because they know that particular person in power will actually do the bidding of that government. And then they will allow them to buy or get for damn near free all the resources that they want, either for pennies on a dollar or no cost. And so this is exactly how it works now. It's basically they have plausible deniability to say, well, we didn't actually steal it, when in reality, yeah, you did. You just had your man on the inside. And so instead, let's say hypothetically that the workers are like, you know what, we're sick and tired of this. We don't want this. So the workers band together and they kick out that manager that got on the inside. And now the person who was coming in to grab all their stuff, now they come in, they're like, hey, I want to get this stuff for free. They're like, wait, where's the manager that we had in here? And it's like, no, it's under new management now. Now you got to pay full price. And now that patron is now leaving mad, pressed, and their hands are empty, because now they just can't rob the store like they were doing before. And now, guess what? That store that they were robbing from, well, that store was supplying them with food and electricity and all these goodies that they had for their kids. And their kids were living high off the hog because of what their father was doing by robbing the store. And now, guess what? They're mad because now they got to go back to their kids and go, Daddy ain't got nothing. Well, you would have had something if you didn't continue to try to rob the store. But you did. So guess what? They kicked you behind out. So this is exactly what we're dealing with right now, right? And so instead of actually dealing fairly with these African countries, they decide that instead they just want to murder either somebody who is the store manager or neutralize somebody who is potentially a store manager, if I can put it in that analogy. It continues, says the agency claimed that the involvement of France in the attempted coup in Burkina Faso on January 3rd of this year has already been established. And yes, they tried to do another coup. They had tried to attempt to assassinate Ibrahim Traoré over 20 times, and they failed every single time. I hope he keeps averting that disaster, because ultimately they're going to try to do to him what they tried to do to Fidel Castro. According to the SVR, the alleged plot involved plans to assassinate Burkina Faso's president Ibrahim Traoré, who it described as one of the leaders of the struggle against neocolonialism. The SVR asserted that Paris expected as such auctions would bring pro-French forces to power in Ouagadougou and weaken political movements on the continent that supported sovereignty and Pan-Africanist ideology. Despite what it described as a failure in Burkina Faso, the SVR alleged that France has shifted its focus to destabilizing undesirable countries in the Sahel-Saharan region. So they said this. They did this with the help of local terrorist groups, and of course the Ukrainian regime, which supplies militants with drones and instructors. I just want to stop here as well, because all this global war on terror, the funny part about the whole global war on terror is it kind of reminds me of what the United States has been doing. Like, for instance, it should be no surprise that people like Osama bin Laden were trained by the CIA, right? I mean, that's pretty much public knowledge now. And so if it was one, then there's got to be two. If there's two, there's got to be four. If there's four, there's got to be eight. If there's eight, that means there's 16, and so on and so forth. So these networks, these terror networks that are operating within these poorer countries, Well, are they just operating alone, or are they operating with a particular goal in mind? And so this destabilization makes it easier for these Western countries to take something over. Like, for instance, think about Congo. The DRC is destabilized. And so that destabilization means that that land is no longer occupied, or people are too scared to occupy that land because they're going to have people who are going to commit sexual assault. They use that as a weapon, or somebody maybe get murdered or killed or robbed. So people don't want to go where there's danger. And so that area is free, essentially, for them to come in and extract the resources without anybody claiming sovereignty. And that's what happens when you destabilize a region. You make the region so horrible that people don't want to be over there, even though you know that there's gold or black gold or lithium or cobalt under that soil, because you know there's money there. And so you scare them off. And that's what we call destabilization. And this is exactly what's happening. And this is what happens to many countries, especially all over Africa. And then they will install these particular leaders that seem to be incompetent, when in reality they are competent. It's just they're competent for the Western powers. They're not competent for the people. And then once they are competent for the people, like a Kwame Nkrumah, like a Thomas Sankara, right, like a Muammar Gaddafi, then they are murdered. They are neutralized, because then they are a threat to the power of the people that own the Western powers. There are oligarchs, corporate parasites that own France. They own the banker named Emmanuel Macron. They own Donald Trump. They own Friedrich Merz. They own the Canadian Prime Minister. His name is escaping me. My apologies. But they own these people. And it's also interesting how a lot of these Western leaders are also former bankers. And so it just goes to show that really they're just puppets of the ruling class, and the ruling class wants to take over these areas. Now, it says another alleged target, according to SVR. So they said accused France of plotting against the Central African Republic. Another target was Madagascar, where in October 2025, new authorities came to power and took a course toward developing relations with BRICS. BRICS, BRICS, stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. This is a block of nations that are basically trying to create a multipolar world. Right now, we just are leaving a unipolar world where the United States was basically, in so many words, the world's economic ruler. But now Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa are basically saying no more. You don't run the show. You don't rule this planet with an iron fist. We shall democratize this power. And you also got to remember what has made the African nations in the Sahel region more dangerous. Well, they came together. So Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger created the AES, which is the Alliance of the Sahel States. And this AES, if they continue the path that they're going, could be comparable to the economic power of BRICS, which is massive, because everybody in their mama knows Africa is rich with resources. Africa is filthy rich with resources. Africa's got so many. Africa got so many resources. It'll make Scrooge McDuck blush. All right, that money bin ain't got nothing on Africa, and so this is why they're trying to tear down BRICS as well as the AES that is now emerging. Because what if somebody like Gaddafi came in and started being the leader of Libya and started reinstituting a lot of what Gaddafi did? And what if Libya was to join the AES under a Gaddafi-like leader? Oh, it's on. It's on like hot buttered popcorn. And that's the crazy part. A lot of people need to realize is that the biggest threat to Western powers is people collectively owning and having sovereignty, ownership, dominion over their natural resources as a collective. That's the biggest threat to power. And this is why you got capitalists talking about, oh my God, socialism doesn't work. When in reality, I mean, how long has Cuba been under an intense blockade, sanctions, and embargo for over 60 years, and they're still operating? Meanwhile, the United States is free as a bird, and yet they actually have a recession every 5 to 7 years. Every 4 to 7 years. Who's the strongest nation? The United States is basically a buff dude that skips leg day. All you got to do is sweep the leg. Now I got Sappy in my head. Sweep the leg. And that's what they're afraid of. This is a note to all the nations that are trying to give their people resources. Don't skip leg day. Don't skip leg day. So what happened to Gaddafi recently? So I want to share what took place. Let me make sure I have this. So, of course, let me share this article, this post, I should say. Let's see. Making sure I have this. Yeah, I got it. So this happened. It says, breaking news. Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, the son of late Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi, has been killed. 4 men reportedly stormed inside his residence, fired shots, and killed him. He was running for president. The polls show he was highly likely to win. The West has killed him just like they killed his father. They couldn't risk having another Gaddafi running the country. And so this was Saif Gaddafi. Now, it's just kind of like when you have name recognition, that's powerful in politics. And so the fact that Saif Gaddafi was essentially running to be the next president, it just shows how really the West was spooked. And so as we see, this is why the West did what they did. And so I want to get into as well as the details as to what they did. Make sure I get this as well. Let me make sure I have this. Where did I hang on? Sorry. It's my article. Ah, got it. Okay. Let me share. Stop sharing here and let's share this. So it says Muammar Gaddafi's son, Saif al-Islam, killed in Libya. So Saif al-Gaddafi, the oldest son of the former longtime Libyan leader, Muammar Gaddafi, has been killed. His lawyer said that on Tuesday that he was killed at 2 p.m. in Zintan in his home by a 4-man commando. It says that the unidentified assailants disabled security cameras in Saif's home before killing him. It says Saif had been warned by those close to him in recent days that there was a problem with his security. Saif had lived in the city of Zintan for a decade since his release from prison after being pardoned in 2017. He had been detained since he was captured during the Arab Spring protests in Libya in 2011, which ultimately saw his father killed. During his father's reign, he is widely seen as the next line in rule. Saif posited himself as a reformist and even led negotiations that led to Libya's ultimate abandonment of its nuclear program. So here's where I'm going to say something controversial. If Libya never abandoned their nuclear program, Muammar Gaddafi, would still be alive. Why do you think North Korea got a nuke? Do you think it was just because there was some evil power that just wanted to hold a nuke against the world? No. Because they remember their history of what the United States has done to Korea. And they don't want a repeat. And somebody like Saif Gaddafi, I'm pretty sure he was a student of history. And he probably thought to himself, well, maybe we just can't do that. And also maybe they reasoned because it's a largely Muslim country that just by principle, they wouldn't want to have anything that powerful. Just like the supreme leader, the Ayatollah in Iran, doesn't believe in having a nuke. Don't let what Netanyahu tells you be fact in your mind. They avoided having a nuke for years, not because the United States was like, oh my God, you can't have one. It's because on principle, they just didn't believe in having one. And that might have also been the same view of a Saif Gaddafi. I'm just spitballing here, but I'm looking at the way Iran operates, and I'm saying, what if Saif Gaddafi felt the same way? But at the same time, not having one could lead to the peril of what happened to him and his family, also to his siblings as well. And so somebody like a Scott Ritter will probably say, well, nobody should have nukes. And I agree, nobody should. You have to have either one or the other. Either nobody should have them or everybody should have them. I vote for nobody should have them. But the people who, let me make myself very clear. The bully that has the biggest stick in the yard should be the first to put his stick down. Mm-hmm. Who's the bully in the yard with the biggest stick? Who has the biggest nuclear arsenal in the world? Who has over 700 bases throughout the entire Earth? Would it be the United States? Well, I guess we know who should be the one to stop their nuclear program first. Be the example. Be the country you want to see in the world. That's all I'm saying. But yes, the murder of Saif Gaddafi really just meant that there was a potential of somebody like him gaining power. Now, it says Saif received a PhD from the London School of Economics. He was defiant when speaking to Reuters in 2011 as the Libyan uprising against his father began. He said, "We fight here in Libya, we die here in Libya." Saif ended up with an International Criminal Court warrant for his arrest in 2011 over the torture of protesters and dissidents. It says, but in 2015, it was agreed that Libya would try him for war crimes. He was convicted in absentia. There has been no government statement yet on his death. Libya is divided into two parts, with an internationally recognized government in Tripoli, headed by Prime Minister Abdul Hamid Daibda. My apologies for messing up the name. And a government in the east led by Khalifa Haftar. Dibaiba, I think that's how it's pronounced, became prime minister in 2021 with a mandate to usher in a democratic elections in Libya, but the process has stalled with his government forging ties with militias and competing with Haftar for access to oil revenue. Earlier this month, Tripoli-based government signed a 25-year oil development and agreement with France's Total Energies and the U.S.'s ConocoPhillips that could more than double the output of state oil company to 850,000 barrels per day. Here is your reason why Saif Gaddafi was murdered. He was assassinated. That's why. Because if the oil is overseen by Western companies, that means the extraction and the profits are going where? They're going to the oligarchs in France and to the oligarchs in the United States. And there's nothing left for the people because guess what? They're greedy, and that's why they're there, because they're there to extract the oil. And they don't want somebody like another Gaddafi who has the name recognition, who can come in there even in a democratic way and go, hey, remember what my dad did for all y'all? Remember when we increased the literacy rate? Remember when we did for giving housing to everybody? Remember when we started giving education to everybody? And everybody, not just men, women. Remember when we did that big, huge infrastructure project when it came to irrigation? Remember all the things that they did? Well, I'm going to continue that. That's what they were scared of. And that would have meant taking those big oil companies and giving them the boot. And then all the profits from the oil get evenly distributed among all the Libyans. So therefore, their standard of living goes back up again, and there's no more slave markets. Because that happened after they murdered Gaddafi. And so now we see that they're trying to keep Libya down. Because if Libya's down, who's up? So now you got ConocoPhillips going, ha, 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 I get to get all that oil now. Just like they did to whom? Like they're trying to do to Venezuela. They're doing that there too now. And unfortunately, this is out of the Jerusalem Post that Venezuela just sent its first shipment of oil to Israel in years. Now Israel is getting Venezuelan oil. All because of what? The West doing what it wants with another country and averting the sovereignty of the people of that country. And this is what they do. This is imperialism. It's a nasty game. Nasty game. Let's finish up here. I want to make sure. Yeah, I finished that. So, and they left that at the bottom, Middle East Eye. Don't you know no good. Y'all should have put that up first. And that's the whole reason why all this is happening. A lot of people will say, we got to go through the history first. It's like, yeah, well, they should have said that first. People need to know why. Yeah, it's not coming up for me. I don't know why. Oh, here it is. Yes, I did have it. Okay. Just share with you guys so that you guys can actually see it for yourself too, because I want to make sure you guys also see this. And this is one of the reasons why all of us on the left, we were pissed when they kidnapped Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia Flores. So Venezuelan sends first oil shipment to Israel in years in sign of relations improving. It says Israel's Bazan group will be responsible for transporting the cargo, according to the report, although authorities have not publicly disclosed this. So it says the shipment represents a renewal of contracts between the Venezuelan government and Israel ever since Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez cut relations in 2009. According to people familiar with the deal, Israel's Bazan group will be responsible for transporting the cargo. It says the report also notes that the deal was not made public, which aligns with Israel's policy of not revealing the sources of its crude imports. The last shipment of oil from Venezuela to Israel consisted of 470,000 barrels, according to Kepler data shared by Bloomberg. So, news comes after Foreign Minister Gideon Saar met with Nobel Peace Prize laureate and Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado on February 4th. Now, remember, she is a disgusting, monstrous Zionist that actually wanted Israel to basically bomb her own country. And so this is what's happened. Now, the Zionist occupying force that is committing a 21st century Holocaust is now getting oil from the largest oil producer in the world because our country kidnapped their president and his wife. And so now they basically have the keys to the store. And so this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to keep Libya in this position. So keep in mind, when the United States and Western powers call a particular leader a brutal dictator, I want you to follow the money as to why they say that. Never take what they say at face value. Never, never. Because they lied to you about so much. They will continue to lie to you about who a brutal dictator is. They will tell you, oh, this person historically, they did all these horrible things, when in reality, they will twist the truth in order to fit their narrative. They did it to Gaddafi. They did it to Sankara. Right? They did it to Salvador Allende. They did it to Castro. They did it to Chavez. I mean, they're doing it to Traoré now. They're doing it to Xi Jinping. They did it to Kim Jong-un. And by the way, I ain't got no love for Vladimir Putin, but they're doing it to Putin too. So always be wary of what the United States says is some brutal dictator. And then remember what the United States has done to his own people. Go ahead and give a like to the stream. Thank you so very much to everybody. Let's get into the chizats. Why do I keep saying it like that? God, I'm such a millennial. Ugh. Sometimes I get on my own damn nerves. Anyways, we're good on the kick side. Why in the world? Why, JB? Why? All right, let's see if we have any Rumble rants. Okay, we are decent on the Rumble side. All right. I want to rendezvous by candlelight. I want to hug and squeeze you through the night. So lock the door, throw away the key, ecstasy. I'm not going to sing no Karen White song live on here. No, absolutely not. I'm not your Superman. All right. So start off with this. Let me see. Teresa, thank you so very much for the super sticker. All right. Appreciate it. Let's continue on. Man, I'm telling you, man, these imperialists, they have no shame. Interesting. Black Unit Griffin says, when I'm watching live streams on my phone or my TV channels that aren't even monetized, like this one, get commercials frequently, especially when folks question reality or the establishment. But I got my monetization back, by the way. I don't know, but yeah. But some people even talked about getting commercials before I got my monetization back. Let me see. Let's continue on. Edward says Israel's economy is doing better than the U.S. and the Trump administration still funds them. Yeah, and they're getting health care, child care, free college. They're getting all the free stuff. Like, what? They're getting all the free stuff, and what are we getting? It's wild, man. Very, very wild. Teresa says Sabi speaks in a way that commands attention from the masses. Yes, she does. I have a lot to learn. Black Universe says the whole files situation, we know exactly what you're talking about, has been pretty interesting because you can see how people retreat into their conditioning and they just bail. Whole groups of people who turn out to be sheep. Yeah. Also, how many people who are big left accounts, how many of them have been talking about Bill Clinton being on the list? And also, I'm gonna be real with you. However you feel about his contributions, Noam Chomsky should still be condemned. And if you saw the news and the accusations against him before, back then, when it happened, then why are you still contacting Epstein unless he has something on you? It's just crazy, man. Yep. Teresa said, Lee Camp said it for years now, petrodollar. Yep. And Mary Ploppin says, absolutely disgusting. Yeah, what they're doing to these countries is horrible, awful, awful. Roger says, JB, let's not call it BRICS. That is the Emirates, Egypt, Ethiopia, Brazil, Russia, India, Indonesia, Iran, China, South Africa. BRICS. Yeah, that's a lot of countries. Let me see. Adam says, wasn't it the U.S. sending their sour oil through and using misinformation to blame Delcy? My question is if Delcy is against this, because here's a problem, man. The U.S. government is basically the mafia. And what are they saying and doing to Delcy, Vice President Delcy of Venezuela, that is forcing her hand? Or my question is Delcy doing this on her own? Is she doing this under duress? Or is it something that is deliberate? Now, from what I've heard, she is a 100% Chavista. And she does not like the West. And so something tells me that what the Trump regime is doing is basically circumventing her and trying to push oil to go wherever they want it to. That's why I'm not so quick to place blame on Vice President Delcy. I want to wait and see what she says and what comes out. But it is my reaction to seeing that story out of the Jerusalem Post was, what the F? I was like, what? Yeah. But yeah, it's a lot right now, man. Bryce, good to see you. Says, if your message don't pop up, be patient. For whatever reason, they're getting hidden. That also may be true. That also, because the thing is, like, if it sounds kind of questionable to the algorithm, it might be. Because I do have a couple of words hidden, but they're very offensive words. But I don't think anybody said anything like that. So it may just be an automatic thing on the YouTube side. I don't have the power for that on my side. DC says that gerrymandered county machine gives back a bloody finger. One person, one vote. Audrey says a jury found President Trump liable for sexual abuse in 2023. He owes millions. The ruling was already upheld in appeals court. The case is over. All the information is already easy to look up. And also, this says a perversely high concentration number is slaving. Yep, absolutely. Make sure. Jacqueline says, I'm really glad you got remonetized, JB. That being said, I watched a recent replay of one of your live streams after the remonetization, and the amount of ads was wild. Didn't put me off, though. Oh, wow. Yeah. And here's the crazy part. There's an option for the live streams where I can do like automatic ad breaks while I'm live, but I kept it on manual because I'm like, that'll annoy the hell out of viewers because, like, yeah, I just kept it manual so that there's no like ad breaks while I'm live. But yeah, yeah. Now I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna be real with you. I was tempted to do it because I'm a broke brother, but at the same time, I'm grateful just for people, wanting to hear what I have to say. So, and also, who trust me enough to watch. So I'm grateful for that. I think I'm just okay. Adam says secret indictment rumored BS, of course. U.S. selling to Israel to rub in their gangsterism. Maybe. All right. Roger says, JB, I am noticing a lot of texts from people who want to buy a house that I do not own. These are private equity firms, and so looking to convert everyone into renters, transferring wealth to them. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, it's horrible. Aura Terrorist says, heads up, Discord might be joining the mandatory ID game soon. Yep. And this is another reason why I didn't have a Discord community for this channel. Not that I knew this was going to happen. It's just, I said to myself, like, if I can't be present like I want to, I'm not going to have one. And unfortunately, what happens in some of these communities, like, yeah, you can have moderators, but you need somebody that's going to be able to moderate constantly because people are up at different hours and different days and things like that. And like, I barely keep up with all my social media. So how am I going to have a Discord? But yeah, it is getting bad because there's more censorship. I am on Upscroll, and I think that Upscroll is good for now. But it's just a matter of time before the powers that be, get a hold of that as well. So, it's just until you truly dismantle the system, you're gonna have everything is temporary. Everything. Radical Education says it does seem likely that they kidnapped Maduro to put pressure on Venezuelans to make the deals. But from reading news from the region, the idea is to build up the productive forces and reinvest profits, similar to reform and opening up under, I guess, Deng Xiaoping. Mm-hmm. All right. So, and thank you very much for this. Jimmy Apples says, nice to see you, JB. Yep. Oh, and this one, Rombat says, one thing is for certain, when it comes to Africa as a whole, AFRICOM is the biggest threat to the continent. Absolutely. And the general that is leading AFRICOM, they put a black general there. All skin folk ain't kinfolk. All right. Ready to get to the final one? We're going to get to the final one segment. And so, of course, we talked about the Dr. CBS. Then we talked about Gaddafi, another Gaddafi being assassinated, the son of Muammar Gaddafi, Saif Gaddafi. Now we're going to be talking about healthcare in Florida. Florida HIV disaster. And as you can see, it's out of reach because of income criteria. So let's get into this story. And I want people to pay attention, even if you don't have HIV, even if you are perfectly healthy, I want you to pay attention to this. Too rich for help, too poor to pay. If you are living in the state of Florida, I need you to listen to this right now. And if you're in another state, I want you to listen to this as well, because this could be coming to a state near you. Right now, as we speak, there was a proposal, and I say was in the past tense, to limit, to shrink, to cut the provisions for people who need HIV/AIDS medication down so that there will be less people eligible, and then it would affect over 16,000 people within the state. Thus, it could grow the numbers of people who potentially could be infected over time. And so now, because of this, then it could lead into another health disaster. We thought that COVID was bad. This could also make things worse as well. So let's get into this. There was a story that recently came out, and I want to make sure that I get into this. And make sure I have. Yes. So let me share this story for you guys, and then we will get into the more of the nuts and bolts of this as well. So this was a video put out by the Washington Post, and then we shall get into this as well.
When you're undetectable, that means the virus is so low in your body, it can't be detected by blood. That's what our medicines do for us. That's why I've been with my husband now 15 years. He is not HIV positive. None of my kids are HIV positive. These medications, 130-day supply of Biktarvy, I'm just speaking of what I take, can run between $5,000 to $6,000 a month for a 30-day supply. Who can afford that? I have a.
So let me share this. Let me read this really quick. It says Samuel isn't alone. About 16,000 HIV and AIDS patients could lose free medication and insurance help from the Florida AIDS Drug Assistance Program is scaled back.
I have a beautiful family because I'm virally suppressed. My kids need me. If I get down sick or I'm in the hospital, I can't move around, or my immune system starts weakening, how can I be the mother to my twins and help them? How can I be the wife to my husband and be the advocate that I can be for so many people if I'm not healthy? And I think that's one of my biggest fears is like, I look at my kids, I look at my husband, I look at my life and seeing how God has blessed me where I'm taking my medicines, I'm doing great. And that fear of possibly, oh, you may not have access to this come March 1st. That freaks me out.
So this is what's happening within the state of Florida. They're literally trying to make budget cuts and decrease the eligibility standards for people to receive free medications for HIV, AIDS medications, which could be disastrous, not just for the 16,000 people, but also people who potentially could be infected as well. And then because of financial burdens, because of a paywall, then they wouldn't be able to keep themselves healthy as well, thus increasing the amount of patients that we have. And it makes it an extremely vulnerable population even worse off. And so I want to share this article that came out of the Washington Post. And the reason why I'm sounding the alarm is because this is a public health emergency that is emerging right now within the state of Florida. So pay attention, y'all, because this also can have other implications. So we'll get into this. It says free HIV drugs save lives. Why one state is restricting access for thousands. It says here, says her medications are provided by the Florida AIDS Drug Assistance Program, funded through a federal initiative that has long served as a lifeline for hundreds of thousands of Americans living with HIV who otherwise could not afford expensive antiretroviral drugs and care. State officials, citing financial difficulties, are lowering the income threshold to receive benefits that are no longer covering certain medications. So, and this is going to start on March 1st. So we have less than a month. That's the National Alliance of State and Territorial AIDS Directors, estimates that 16,000 Floridians will lose assistance from either the drugs or premiums for health plans that cover them. The January 8th announcement blindsided HIV nonprofits, public health advocates, and doctors who are scrambling to help patients find coverage and stay on medications. So this is going to be extremely dangerous, right? And anybody that's old enough that remembers the AIDS epidemic, it was brutal, right? And it wasn't just people who were LGBTQ that were affected. It was people that weren't LGBTQ that were affected as well. So the Florida Health Department said that the statement that changes in the program stem from rising healthcare costs and a lack of sufficient federal funding. The shift will prevent a shortfall of $120 million and ensure resources to the greatest number of individuals within our funding constraints. It says it did not answer questions about how the state managed the program. So $120 million. Now, to just a regular person, $120 million, that's a massive amount of money. But to a state, that is not much. 120 million. I didn't say billion. I said million with the M. And that's all you need to keep the amount of people infected down, to keep these 16,000 people healthy. I mean, why wouldn't we? Why isn't that a higher priority? It's kind of funny how we have this, but we spend millions upon millions of dollars on other things. Let's see. I want to share this as well. Because I think this is important. Because when people say, "Oh, that's $120 million that we just can't afford," I call BS. $120 million, and you mean to tell me that Alligator Alcatraz in the Big Cypress National Preserve was the first detention facility in the state open? Before the facility received its first detainees on July 3rd, DeSantis and Florida officials gave a tour to President Donald Trump and Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. Says less than a month in, state contracts show the facility cost more than $250 million to set up and was expected to cost $450 million per year. So we can spend this much money on Alligator Alcatraz, but we have $120 million shortfall for people who need HIV/AIDS medication. And we're willing to cut 16,000 of those people out. We're willing to do all that. They're willing to fight and spend millions on against ballot measures that are either for pro-choice or for marijuana legalization. They're willing to spend all those millions to fight those, but not money for people who are economically displaced for HIV and AIDS medications. Is that what I'm getting correctly here? And it's really about who it affects. It's not about the money. It's about where it goes. And so I want to share this with you guys too. Because people are like, well, Florida can't afford it. It says Florida surplus hits 3.8 billion, but big deficits loom ahead. So this came out in September of last year. And they're basically saying, oh, well, we already have a surplus. Hell, Ron DeSantis was bragging that we had a surplus. I got us a surplus. All right, well, use that surplus to help fund people who need HIV and AIDS medication. But they won't dare do a thing like that. All this money we spend for other things, all these budget cuts that we do for, the big real estate corporations. We have how many homes that are now owned by big corporations that we could tax these big corporations instead to cover that budget shortfall, but no, they don't want to do that. And so this is why I think it's very important for people to know what this could mean, especially for Floridians. And this could also expand to other places. This could expand to cancer meds. It can expand to diabetes medications. This can expand to cardiovascular, heart medications, people who need, medications for pulmonary issues. What if you're somebody who's low income and you have sickle cell anemia? Like all these different things. And every single time there's a budget shortfall, well, I guess we're going to have to, make sure that the people who are who are the most disenfranchised, well, they're going to have to be the ones that suffer. Because we're not going to allow the big businesses, the big billionaires, we're not going to allow them at all to at least give a little bit, to help us out. Let me also share this video. It's pretty quick. It's pretty much a synopsis of what's going on, but I want to share also what's going on. Somebody actually brought up some really good points that I want to make.
It announced today that it's planning to draft a new rule changing eligibility requirements for the AIDS Drug Assistance Program. Now, the Health Department was planning on making changes that would have cut about 10,000 people from the program. The AIDS Healthcare Foundation did challenge the new requirements, claiming the state wasn't following the mandatory rulemaking process. Today's notice is the first step in that process, which includes public comment. The state has been trying to cut about $120 million to make up for rising premiums and federal cuts to a grant used to fight HIV and AIDS.
All right, so let me share this with you guys too in the article, because this is also a really good point. It says Florida's program is funded through the landmark 1990 Ryan White federal law, which assists more than 500,000 people diagnosed with HIV or AIDS. The federal government provides grants based on the number of people with HIV reported living in the state, which in turn provides a smaller share of funds. Medical advances mean HIV is no longer a death sentence. Demand for care has grown since more people live longer with the virus, driving up costs for state drug assistance programs. and said in 2010, as Florida officials grappled with strained budget and a surge in unemployment, the state slashed ADAP funding and stopped accepting new participants as a waiting list swelled to nearly 1,500. Drug companies stepped in to help with low-cost medications. The health department considered restricting eligibility the next year, but backed down after protests from Floridians living with HIV and others, including singer Elton John, who runs a foundation dedicated to HIV care and awareness. It says now Floridians earning up to 400% of the federal poverty line, about $64,000, qualify for the drug assistance program. Starting March 1st, only people earning up to 130%, about $21,000, will be eligible. So this is one of the biggest issues here, is if you're making $64,000 between 2101 and $64,000, that eligibility is gone. That is gone. And so you literally have to be making the federal minimum wage, which is what, $7.25 an hour, in order to be able to qualify. When in reality, if you make $64,000 a year, do you have $5,000 a month to pay for Biktarvy? And people don't realize how much this hits home. I know a couple people that are positive and undetectable. I know people that have it. And what about them? How are they supposed to fare? You basically have to be rich in order to be able to afford HIV meds. And this is now also a class issue. Because the people who are rich that have HIV, oh, well, they'll be fine. But the people who are poor or working class, well, sorry for you. And so I think that's one of the biggest points, is that this is also part of the class war. I also want to share, there was make sure that I can find it. There was a particular video, and I would have put the link to, I would have put the link in a particular place, but every single time I put the link in a certain spot, it never goes back to where it's supposed to. It was on Instagram, but for some reason, I don't think I can find it. But essentially, once you start paywalling people's health, people die. And then when you restrict that and make the wall higher, more people die. And that's one of the worst parts about this. Now, there has been some positive news. And I want to share this with you guys because I think this is important. And I'm going to tell you why I continue with this story. So this is out of The Advocate. It says Florida restores funding for 16,000 people's HIV medication for now. It says Florida has reversed funding cuts for HIV medication, but only until it can go through the formal rule-making process. Okay. It says the Florida Department of Health is reversing its funding cuts to a program that provides HIV medication for low-income individuals, but only until they can do it legally. So this battle's not over. And in a state that views those of us who are LGBTQ as less than human, they're going to allow this to happen. But the crazy part is, here's the crazy part though. They don't see, like, what if somebody who's born with it? What if somebody who is not LGBTQ that has it? We've seen people who do have it who are not LGBTQ. So guess what? What happens when they start falling? What happens when they start dropping like flies? And the crazy part is, and here's the crazy part. A lot of people, they should be educated on what HIV and AIDS is, but they're not. I can't believe, like, there are so many shows that actually even educated people. I remember people being educated about it in the show A Different World. Hell, Mr. Gaines knew about it. He knew the accurate information about it. And the thing is like, we should be doing what we can to protect everybody. But if you have a certain prejudice against people, then if something bad happens to them, then you're just going to look the other way when something negative happens. And that's the part that is sad. We allow our humanity to leave us over bigotry. Let's continue. It says the department pushed a notice on Tuesday backtracking its decision to gut the AIDS drug assistance program after supposedly failing to find $120 million in the state budget to cover it. Instead, the state will attempt to go through the formal rulemaking process in order to make the cuts after a lawsuit from the AIDS Healthcare Foundation accused officials of violating the law. Says the department's actions make our clear and legal process have not been followed. Floridians will now have a say in what happens to this program and its effects on them. Says it will provide needed transparency, and the department has not shown why it needs to make these harmful changes and show how it has claimed $120 million deficit. This program should be fully funded to continue the care needed by thousands across Florida. The ADAP helps provide medication to those making up to 400% of the federal poverty level or less. Under the proposed cuts, it would only cover those making up to 130% of the poverty level, impacting over half of more than 30,000 enrolled in the program. While the state claims it can't find the money for the program, a December investigation from the Miami Herald and Tampa Bay Times found that Ron DeSantis' administration diverted more than $35 million in taxpayer funds to defeat two constitutional amendments on the ballot in 2024. The amendments, which have legalized recreational marijuana and overturned the state's 6-week abortion ban, each fell short of the 60% supermajority required to pass, receiving 56% and 57% respectively. So the Democratic Party chair, Nikki Fried, previously told the Advocate that it is absolutely unconscionable to think that the state of Florida or any government in the United States at this moment, with this amount of research and advances that we have, either was intentionally or as a consequence of intentional actions, giving tens of thousands of individuals potentially a death sentence. So we really have the money. So they were able to find $500 million building alligator Alcatraz with no big contracts. We're still in a state of emergency for now almost 2.5 years. They have the money. They can put the money into coffers. They're choosing not to. And so here's another thing that I want to talk about that Nikki Fried didn't talk about, because we're talking about how, the Republicans. Why haven't we nationalized the healthcare industry? Why haven't we nationalized the pharmaceutical industry and made it so that it's no longer for profit? Why haven't we done this? Because if the profit motive wasn't there, these medications would not cost so much. I'm not here to argue about it's the Republicans' fault, it's the Democrats' fault. No. How many people who consider themselves to be on the Democratic side, people like Nikki Fried and Carlos Guillermo Smith and Anna Escamani that claim, oh my God, we're for universal health care. But my goodness, when something like this happens, then it's, oh my God, we got to fight the Republicans. But when it comes to your fellow Democrats, you don't want to do a damn thing. Where were y'all arguing and calling out Joe Biden for being against passing universal health care, Medicare for all, when he was on Last Week Tonight? I'm sorry. Whatever that name of that show is called, on MSNBC, well, now MS Now, with Lawrence O'Donnell. And Joe Biden said that he would not sign a bill for Medicare for all into law because it would, he said something to the effect of it would dishonor his dead son. What? The hell is wrong with him? And the hell is wrong with all the Democrats that didn't call him out by name? Hell, I would have been acceptable if you called him anything but a child of God. After that one, like, my goodness. And so now you have stuff like this happening. Oh my God, but the Republicans are so bad. Why didn't you fight to create a system, at least federally or statewide, so that we actually have nationalized healthcare or stationalized healthcare for everybody? Why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we fighting to get a single payer healthcare system through ballot measures in Florida? Why aren't we doing that? Yes, we have one of the oldest populations out of any state in the country. In fact, we have the second biggest population for elderly people in the country. And so a lot of people are on Medicare, of course. But as anybody knows, as somebody who's on Medicare, yes, dialysis patients are on Medicare. Somebody like myself, Medicare only pays for 80% of costs. The other 20% have to be picked up either through out-of-pocket, through a secondary insurance, or Medicaid. So if you have $100,000, guess what? You're on the hook for $20,000. So why aren't we doing this? And why aren't you so willing to work with people who work outside of duopoly in order to do this? Why aren't you teaming up with people who are in PSL, Green Party, and other outside parties in order to get this passed? So that people who have HIV and AIDS don't have to enroll in a program. They don't have to do anything that's means tested in order to be able, because if it's means tested, that means you have to make eligibility standards. Without it, if there's no means testing, that means everybody's eligible, no matter who you are, which means that you can't be kicked off if it's universal. And so this is one of the reasons why I say both parties are trash. Because why in the hell aren't you? Why aren't you guys meeting with Buddy Dyer and Jerry Demings to try to get a single payer healthcare system in Florida? Why aren't we pouring our hearts into this? We just came out of a pandemic 5 years ago. Well, almost 6 years ago. And you mean to tell me that we're just gonna just let that happen and just not use that opportunity? The pandemic is still burning everybody's brains. Universal healthcare is still popular. And yet we're allowing this to skate by. And then now we have this scare. And you know what makes me really upset about this? This scare that we had But people who are HIV positive and maybe have AIDS, for the people who have either or, is that the Democrats are going to use this to fundraise off of. That's what pisses me off. Oh my God, the Republicans are doing this. Oh, we can't allow this to happen. Donate to my Act Blue and put me back in office. So what? Then the Republicans can do this again? And then you can fundraise off of our fears again, once again? This is why you have the population of people who are independent and no party affiliate. This is why the population of independents and no party affiliates is exploding now. And also, y'all don't believe in democracy because y'all sat by when Florida canceled its Democratic primary because they wanted to just keep Joe Biden instead of actually hearing other people out. So I'm happy that this crisis has been averted for now, but I'm going to tell you right now, this will come back. And when it comes back, the Democrats are going to be like, oh my God, we need to alert this, keep us in office so that we can fight this. When in reality, the bigger fight should be to make sure that we pass universal health care. And I say not a single payer system, but a nationalized system. That's what we should have. And all this meeting and doing all these exercises and talking about this stuff in conferences and trying to, and then inviting these same Democrats who barely lift a finger, or the only time they lift a finger is because there's Republican control. Then we invite them and then nothing gets done. And then you have crises like this happen. And you for damn sure know that a huge chunk of these people who are needing these medications are Black and brown. Pay attention to what's going on in the state around you, because guess what? If they're going to do it to people who have HIV and AIDS, when it comes to their medications, they're going to do it to diabetics. They're going to do it to people with autoimmune diseases. They're going to do it to people who have cardiac issues. They're going to do it to all these different people. Now, one of the biggest issues with this is that this screams why we shouldn't have a for-profit healthcare system. We shouldn't have for-profit corporations in our healthcare industry. Now, these rising costs that they're talking about are due to shareholders wanting more, and the stagnation of income is from workers because shareholders want more. This doesn't have to be limited to HIV and AIDS. This can expand to medication for people who deal with diabetes, heart disease, kidney failure, musculoskeletal conditions, neurological issues, autoimmune disorders. This sets up workers to die because greedy capitalists don't want money going to people who need medication. They don't want people who need medication to survive because their lives are seen as worth less. This is why we fight. Because we see people's lives as invaluable. Their lives are priceless. Let's start organizing and show our fellow people that their lives mean something. All right, everybody, go ahead and give a like to the stream. Thank you so very much. We're going to get into the last comments, and then we are on our way out. Let me see. We're good on the kick side, so thank you very much for that. Let me go into to see if we have any Rumble rants. All right. Hang on, guys. I'm trying to make sure I don't miss. Okay. I want to make sure, because I don't want to repeat of missing stuff. All right. So, okay. Uh-oh. Let me see. All right. All right. So Mary Ploppin says AIDS has a different definition in at least a dozen countries. That's why AIDS patients in the U.S. basically look tired, while in Africa it's profuse vomiting, like the pandemic. The cure is a disease. Let me see. Yes, Edward says. So in other words, you have to be filthy rich in order to get HIV medication. What the state of Florida is saying is let the poor folks die. Exactly. Yep. Yep. Teresa says, every time corporate controlled media brags about GDP, they always leave out private debt. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Black Unigriffin says, this is alarming stuff. Absolutely. It is. Oh, thank you. Everybody clap it up for Roger Meadows for becoming a channel member. Thank you so very much. Appreciate it. All right. Thank you so very much for that. Let me see. Aura says, ironically enough, alligator Alcatraz could help Nile crocodiles become invasive in Florida. Unlike American alligators and American crocodiles, Nile crocodiles are well known to be man-eaters. Oh, there she goes. She's a man-eater. Sorry. Sorry. Oh, dear. Oh, dear. Oh, dear. Creative Experiments. Hey, Creative Experiments, haven't seen you. Good to see you. It says free healthcare, free food, free rent. I want all those for free 99. Thank you so very much for this. For Roger Meadows says, speaking of CBIs, you read my plan to protect the process. I will be getting to it. Let me see here. Teresa says UBS, Universal Basic Services, not UBI, which they will inevitably get back through price gouging. I mean, isn't that kind of part of the central planning model that we could have in a country like this? We could. See, Adam said, I visited the AIDS quote project 30 years ago, and damn, it's still going. Yep. Hey, Katie Lewis, part of the Orlando chapter. All right, good to see you. It says United States government is a death cult. It thrives off slaughtering the marginalized and disenfranchised. Yes, and enslaving. Yeah, yep. Thank you very much for that. Crazy Cat says people can get HIV from emergency transfusions too. And I was educated on this even deeper as a transplant patient. Now, I didn't do any type of blood transfusions whatsoever because of the science and the research done behind it. I said no to blood transfusions. I was raised Jehovah's Witness too, but one of the researches that was done was that the speed of recovery is actually faster without blood transfusions. Yep. And so that's another reason why I didn't get blood transfusion as well. And so now if there's like blood products which are derived from the components, then that's a different story, right? Because of course, blood consists of 4 components, plasma, platelets, red, white blood cells, and red blood cells. So, but if it's pieces, basically of the 4 main components, then that's a completely different story. So it's kind of like making a cake, you can have the eggs that's inside the cake, that's, but you can't have cake, but I can have the eggs and I can have the eggs, something else. You know what I mean? Holly says it's murder. Yes, absolutely. Sela says abolish all funding of DHS, private health insurance, and medication production. Taxpayers of all levels fund the research and creation. Demand federal housing programs nationwide. Agreed. Thank you very much. Adam says Democrat Ed Koch suppressed AIDS funding in NYC because he was closeted. Classic example. Ed Koch was in the closet? Look, some of the worst things that ever happened to us LGBTQ people were because of closet cases. Case in point, J. Edgar Hoover was a biracial, closeted gay man that hated his own people. Omar Mateen, the shooter at the Pulse nightclub massacre, was a closeted either bisexual or gay man, and he murdered people, 49 people. Some of the worst people have been members of our own community that have committed these horrible atrocities. Closet cases, man. Lady Alice says, I have completely divorced myself from the American electoral politics and do not focus on one party goal in government. Yep. Thank you very much for that. And then Kemi says countries with nationalized healthcare have taken capitalism out of healthcare. No companies involved in healthcare should have stocks or shareholders. I agree. Yeah, no stocks, no shareholders, none of that. Oh, and this one too. Kemi says in England, the government publishes a national price list for every single service and medical supply. It should be that way, but it's not here in the United States. Sean says, it even makes me wonder about PrEP sometimes, because God forbid something happens to my spouse, be it tragically or divorce, and I had to move on, HIV positive or not, and the next partner to be or don't got the resources for it, then what then? Oh yeah, we're screwed. Yeah. And there's a lot of, guys in, my community who are on PrEP, which prevents transmission. So if you have somebody that's positive, undetectable, and you have somebody that's on PrEP, the likelihood of you ever getting infected is less than 1%. Less than 1%. Right? It's extremely low. So, but if you're taking that away, then you're exposing people to even more. Anton says, missed a brilliant woman. Off to catch her earlier. Got me liked just for her appearance. Oh, thank you very much for that. All right. I think. Yeah, I'm glad you were able to catch a live too. You got to come back on. We gotta have a conversation. Colin says the pandemic is ignored despite more heavily impacting the LGBTQIA community. Yeah, it affected us a lot too. And then Sela says, we in NYC City have a version of this price listing for our healthcare services before care is provided. Yep. Thank you. Thank you so very much for that, guys. All right. We need to get going because JB is hungry. I had a late, I had an early lunch, so I'm hungry. All that thinking has made me hungry. But guys, be sure to tune in, and I got to finish my editing tonight because I do on Kind Connections podcast. I do have a podcast premiering tomorrow, so be sure to check out that on the Kind Connections podcast. And yeah, I will be doing some clips, and then I also have another guest coming in next week. I'm not going to reveal the name because you guys might know this person, you guys might not know that person, but either way, it's going to be a good one. All right. And then, of course, next Sunday, I will be doing mutual aid. And so I'll be preparing for that as well. So, guys, I got to get going. But I hope you guys have a good one. For all the people who were listening, especially in regards to what's going on here in Florida, please make sure to share and make sure to, try to prevent this from happening in your state, because they will use budgets as a reason for that. Also, when it comes to what's going on in Cuba, keep an eye on that. And one of the things I also wanted to say was, as Cuba continues to fall under the weight of what the United States is doing, this is going to increase people needing to flee. And they're going to end up coming here because they need to get out from what the United States is doing to them. And because of that, then it's going to put more of a strain. It might put more of a strain in this country. And people are going to say, oh, my God, it's because of the socialist government they have in there, when in reality, it's because of the sanctions and blockades that they've had in there for over 60 years. Never let them give you the okie doke. Never let them manipulate you into thinking or brainwash you into thinking that it's because of the system they have, when in reality, it's the person that had their foot on the neck as to why they couldn't breathe. It's the equivalent of people saying George Floyd died because he had drugs in the system, when in reality there was a knee on his neck. Continue to point to the knee on the neck. Stop blaming the victim. That's all I got to say. But guys, take care of yourselves. Water your plants, water yourselves, leave the road better than you found it. Thank you to Dr. Charisse Burden-Stelly. Smoke them if you got them, drink them if you got them. If you ain't got them, then watch something funny, because joy is revolutionary, or read because reading is fun to me. So eat some oatmeal raisin cookies. And yes, I'm looking at you, Roger. Oatmeal raisin cookies. I said it. With a cold glass of milk. And if you're lactose intolerant, do some oat milk or something like that, because, I don't want your tummy to get a little, I don't want to get the stomach bubbling. You know what I mean? Anyways, guys, take care of yourselves. Mwah, forehead kisses. And yeah, stay away from all the bad gas. Good night. Thank you so much for watching, and I appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you'd like to see any more, you can look here. Mwah, forehead kisses.